Hello everyone, welcome back to Rolling Solo. My name is Adam Smith and this is part 2 of the Sword and Sorcery component overview. In the last video we went over a whole bunch of things from the box. We went over all kinds of tokens and soul gems and miniatures. What you're seeing here is everything that was inside of the box that you didn't get to see in the last video. So if you haven't checked out the part 1, make sure to go back onto my channel and double check that you watch it first before we're going through this one, because we've already covered half of the material. So what I've got out here in front of me to talk to you about today is all the miniatures that were hiding in the second tray and deeper. I pulled them all out, so there's even more. It's craziness. Now, we'll go ahead and start, and I'm not going to be able to name these because I haven't actually played it yet. So some are fairly obvious what they are, but some of them are like bosses, for instance, and I'm not sure what their names are going to be. But the whole idea of this is to give you an idea of what the figures look like, the quality, and that kind of thing. And I can tell you, for the most part, for what I'm seeing in this game, is I'm quite happy with the detail. It's pretty good. If I get like this guy here, it looks like an orc, like really cool. Like I think painting that would just be so much fun. And I'm kind of looking forward to doing that. Now there's, again, I'm not too sure of the structure in terms of color. I don't know if it's green, then blue, then red. That would be my guess. But I've got a whole bunch of red here out in front. Looks like we kind of got like a succubi type character, like an orc shaman, or shaman, sorry. Another orc, but looks like a berserker type warrior character. We've got kind of a bardish type character here, or a pirate of some type, maybe human. This is definitely a skeleton and has a really cool tombstone right behind him, which is pretty cool. Now, the one thing I want to note about this game that makes it really, really unique miniatures-wise is you'll notice that the poses are different. So there are a couple here that, like in this particular pile of red, not many are duplicates, but if you go over here, you can see I've lined them up in rows, and there's 2 different poses for each of them, even though they're the exact same monster. So for instance, you've got a skeleton here with a crossbow, but then behind him you've got a skeleton with a sword. So it just is really cool that they went the extra mile, essentially, in terms of just adding that variation in what a miniature looks like. I really like that. I'm a huge fan of that, because in most cases when you're playing a dungeon crawler, you'll get like 18 skeletons and they all look the same. It's nice that they went the extra step to do that. There's some other ones back here. Again, they're similar to what was up here, but again, poses are different. You'll notice the poses are very different. The orc kind of shaman is there again with the orc berserkers, but they're in green this time. There's some gremlins, which are these small little creatures right here. They're actually, I think, the smallest creature in the entire game. And they, I don't know how nasty they are just yet, but I'm sure we'll find out. It looks like we got another kind of human character here. And again, you can kind of see there's that classic bending or warping. Sorry about the focus there. Bending or warping with the sword. And that's kind of actually very common with this. So there's quite a few characters here that I noticed that had bends in them, which I'll just have to heat up with hot water, and then I'll be able to bend them into place and then cool them down with some cold water, and I should be okay. The bosses are really, really cool in this. I've already gone ahead and shown you this insane miniature over here. This 5-headed dragon, which is just ridiculously huge, and is, I think, from what I understand, a side quest to go to his lair. These guys are part of the base game from what I understand, and these are the enemies that you're going to be primarily focusing on in terms of trying to defeat. Now, one of these is likely the end boss, and my guess would be it's this one. Again, I haven't looked too far, but there's also this guy right here behind him. It kind of resembles a Belrog almost type character, is really what I think of when I look at him. Detail-wise, very, very cool. Like lots of sharp edges on this miniature. So in terms of painting, you're not going to have too much problems being able to really go to town and make this thing pop. So that's gonna be a fun one to do. And again, I'm not sure his name, but I'm sure I'll get used to him when I play him. This guy here is kind of like a necromancer, sorry, and he's got kind of like a little bit of a. It's got a little skull on top of his, what looks to be a bow with kind of teeth in it, I guess. And yeah, he's pretty cool. I like him. He's unique for sure. Then there's this guy here who looks probably the closest to a human character, but likely not. I don't know. It could be a vampire. It could be anything. But very, very cool. Again, like painting that will be a lot of fun. He's kind of got his cape. He's grabbing it there. This is really cool. I thought this was a really nice miniature. Look at this guy. insane. Like that is so detailed. Like, so some of these guys, in my opinion, pop more than others. So I've noticed that, like this one here has really got some crazy detail to it, whereas the human here, it does have detail. It's not lacking, but it's because it's on a smaller scale, it's much more fine-tuned and stuff like that. It's not as gritty as this gigantic orc just busting through his chains. It's pretty crazy. There's another one here hiding behind this guy here. And it looks to be kind of another Orc Shaman who's, I don't know, that's actually, maybe it's a Goblin King, I think. He's got kind of a crown going on the top and a gigantic cape. And, oh wow, look at the detail on the cape, guys. So you can tell, like they did go, you know, they could have just left this as a static cape, but there's actually ridges in that. So when that gets painted up, that's going to look fantastic. Very cool. Moving over to the other side, over here, we've got some green, blue, and blue again. So again, this is going to be very similar to what's over here. Same type of monsters. I'm not sure what how many different ones there are, but we can look at these cards in a second to find out some variation of them. But I'll just go ahead and look at them quickly. So again, their poses are different, as always. So these guys are an example. There's 2, 2, and 2, and each of them have different poses. This one here you can see is kind of bending over to the left, so he's going to need some heat in order to get himself straightened up. Also, I believe Arius Games is also really responsible in that if you get anything in your game that is broken, damaged, or has a problem, they're very quick turnaround on getting you fixed up. So I don't know how it'll work for the Kickstarter backers and how quickly they can fix things up, but I actually did get one major defect in mine. So most of my miniatures were fine, but I noticed, and I could be blind, maybe my base is in there, but one of my Orc Shamans actually does not have a base. It looks like he became unglued, so he's not broken per se. The bottoms of his feet are still there. It almost looks like the blue base just popped off. I have miniature glue, so I could just fix this if I can get a hold of a base. But if I can't, I may have to message them and then just have that replaced. But to be honest, with the number of miniatures, which if I remember correctly, it's kind of between about 105 and 120, somewhere in that range. It's a large amount of miniatures, and they were churning these things out by bucket loads. During the Kickstarter, they showed pictures of them fulfilling this, and it was just ridiculous. So, I mean, the chances of a base coming off are actually higher than you might think, especially when these guys are getting all intertwined with their weapons and things like that. It probably doesn't take much to have something come unglued. But anyway, very cool. So the back characters, again, very similar to the green and red, except again, probably for a different rank level. My guess is green is lowest, blue's mid, and reds are high, but I could be totally wrong on that, so do not take that for fact. Now, the next thing I want to talk about, because we kind of just done the miniatures, and I don't think there's really too much more I can show you until we really get into the gameplay. What I can do right now, though, is talk about the cards that we receive, which are tarot-sized cards that kind of go along with and they're essentially the AI of these enemies as you play the game. So you've got like the gremlins here we talked about, these little small creatures, right? So they have their own full-size tarot card. And again, I'm not going to be able to explain to you how this is going to work during gameplay just yet. I only have just getting my head around the rules and stuff like that, but essentially, like, you've got a tarot card that's supposed to show you based on a roll how this character is supposed to act. So you're going to keep this next to you if you have gremlins or a gremlin pack in the game with you. So that's cool. And you can see, you'll notice there's blue, right? So this is blue. It even has a bee up there. This one here is a gremlin again, but it's green. So again, proving, and then it moves to the next character. So red is obviously, there's no red gremlins that I can see so far, so I'm assuming red is the highest and likely the nastiest. Then they go to the Orc Shamans. It's really cool, the artwork they put on the back. It's really nice. So I'm just going to kind of flip a few, and yeah, so you can see some of these guys actually have red to them, but the gremlins did not. But again, so you're going to keep all of these next to you, and I'm sure as you play through the campaign, you'll become familiar with them. And essentially what they are is reference cards for its AI. They're obviously going to behave a little differently because I believe there's cards within the game that will tweak their abilities. So this is not the end-all be-all of what they can do, but this is essentially your base of reference in terms of playing the game. So this is what I will be having next to me while I play the solo playthrough to explain to you guys kind of how this works. Oh, and there's some gremlins there. So these ones are gremlins, I guess, and the ones I had shown you, I think, were packs of gremlins. So maybe when you get more than one, they come in a pack, and they're maybe a little more vicious. These ones right here, you may be like, what the heck is that? It's a monster with a gigantic phaser on top of his back. This is actually for Galaxy Defenders, and it's another Arius Games production that's already been out for quite some time. But what they did, which was I think is really smart, is if you happen to own Galaxy Defenders, they actually included as part of the Kickstarter edition cards to allow you to bring some of those monsters into the game. So you can actually just add variation to your game, which is incredible. And of course, they gave me a pack of cards that go along with those particular characters, but I haven't opened them, and I'm not going to just yet until I acquire the game because, well, I don't have the miniatures for them, and I don't feel like proxying them either. But yeah, that's essentially the tarot cards, and we'll get into further detail on that in the solo playthrough. Next up here, we've got the event deck. Event deck is not too exciting, and it's kind of spoiler territory because this is talking specifically about events that you're going to run across as you play through the campaign. So I do not want to flip these and show you too many, but I'll show you maybe the top one. So essentially, it'll just give you a card like this. It'll say story event, read and apply the story event as described in the storybook. Done. So essentially at the beginning of every game, there's a number here on these event cards, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, when you're setting up the scenario, you're going to go ahead and it's going to tell you a certain numbers to pull for sure, and then it's also going to give you kind of a way to shuffle a couple in, and then one may enter and one may not. So it kind of adds variation to plays. If you replay it later, you may not get the same events, essentially, but the main story will always stay true. So I can't really describe 100% how the events work until we get to the solo setup video. Then I'll give you a much better explanation as to how that works. Right here we have what I understand as is the ghost soul forms of all of our heroes along with companion cards. So if we have, for instance, an elemental or some type of creature that can be summoned or something like that by a cultist or any one of our heroes or something like that, it's right here, along with if our character dies at any point. These are going to tell you essentially how your character will behave when they're dead. When they're alive, this is what sits on the player board. When they die, you just flip the card over and it gives you essentially your soul abilities when you're essentially now kind of in a ghost form. You are immortal, so you don't die in this game, which is really cool, and we'll kind of get to that more in the solo playthrough as well. This pile right here is permanent quests, so I'm not too familiar with this, and I shouldn't say they're all quests. This one's a quest. These are actually items, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, are consumables you can purchase, and I only know that because of the gold value in the bottom, and that means that you can purchase them from the market, I believe. And this is again just a big stack of items that you're able to go ahead and acquire over the game, and typically most of these things have not just one side. Oh, they actually have. They're usually dual-sided, so they'll have. They'll have one right here like this. This is Golden Idol +1, and then you can... Actually, this particular one I think is permanent, doesn't have any change in the back, but some of these actually are different on the back, I believe, I think. Let me see. This one is... Like if you look at the Elven Knives, you've got that, and if you flip it over, yes, it does change. So you've got Elven Knives on this side, and you've got knives on this side. So there are, some of them are double-sided, so even though the stack looks small, there's actually quite a bit in there. This one right here is just a reference for you because these are considered buildings. I'm assuming during the solo playthrough, this would be like your town phase. You can go to the Rising Pony and essentially try to gamble, I believe, by rolling dice to see if you can win money. That's pretty cool, so you can bet, and you can also go to the Enchanting Anvil, which allows you to enchant your weapons and basically create armor as well. You can, so it's a forging site, essentially. It's very, very cool that way. I don't know how this is gonna play out when we start, but I will be able to explain it again in more detail when we go. Background talents. This, from what I understand, is a normal requirement unless you choose not to use them, but background talents, I believe, are one unique background talent per hero. So when you start the game, you pull your talent, and this is essentially kind of something that just gives your character a little bit, not only of just a little bit of text here about their background talent, but also gives us information about what you are. So if you're a gambler, these are the particular benefits you'd get, that type of thing. Not going to go through all of them just yet because, again, spoiler territory, and also, well, I guess the spoiler thing doesn't really matter because this isn't like a legacy game, but I'm not going to show it to you until we start actually playing because there's no real reason to just yet. This massive, massive pile of cards right here are all, and if I'm going to probably mistaken this for another thing, I want to be 100% sure that I get this right. These are the hero powers. So there's a lot of them. In the base, I mean, again, I've got all those extra heroes, so this deck goes way up. This is the pile that I chose not to sleeve, and you can see why. I would probably blow $50 just trying to sleeve all this stuff. So I sleeved what made sense, and I avoided this stack because at most 5 people will be in the game, and typically there's about 8 to 10 cards per person, so about a 50 pack of sleeves is probably enough to cover up to 5 characters in play at once, which would be your max anyway. And if you're playing solo, you're probably only playing 2 or 3 characters anyway, so you won't need that many. So that kind of essentially covers all the cards here, but then there's of course all the cards that came in the wonderful tray. So these ones here are considered encounter cards, and so encounter cards will have things like this, like Dark Tranquility, activate no enemies, and stuff like this. So I think when you pull these in order to determine whether an encounter happens, we'll be able to find out more about that as we play. Enemy cards, you pull these to most likely spawn enemies. It'll tell you where to spawn them and all that kind of stuff. Enemy powers, these are going to be advancements or essentially kind of like a bonus to a particular enemy. Is going to have maybe an actual weapon in their hand. For instance, this one says flaming weapon. This one here is a treasure, so as we go ahead and loot things throughout the game and search around, you can find some pretty cool stuff, and there's a nice big pile for treasure. We got traps here, so when you open up chests or doors, bad things can happen, and it'll also tell you how far away from where your hero is standing that other people are going to get hit. So if you try to crack a door open, you may actually end up hitting one of your friends just down the hallway. So you can be greedy or try to run ahead, but you can actually end up hurting somebody at the same time. This one here is the Mace. So this is an item card, obviously. There's actually quite a few in here. I've jumbled them up, but I believe there's really powerful weapons that are not just considered general items. So there's items that are considered starter, I believe. And you'll see there's a cost to purchase this one at 30, and then when you forge it, which means you can see how it changes, the art even changes. It goes from being just a regular mace, and then I'm sure once you use the enchanting armor, or enchanting anvil I should say, then you can go ahead and enchant the weapon and it becomes that much more powerful. So again, this is a gigantic deck full of items that you can gain, or you start with when you begin the game, or potentially go to the market and buy. And then I think there's some really powerful ones hiding at the bottom. So I'm not gonna be able to tell you 100% which ones they are, because I don't even know if I can happen to pull one that's lucky. No. So we'll see those in the playthrough. I'm gonna leave those as a surprise for when we actually start playing. Okay. What's the other things we haven't talked about? We've covered the cards, we've covered the miniatures, we've covered everything in the box, really. The only thing I haven't talked about yet, and this is something I mentioned in the last video for those of you who have been following along, is I wanted to talk to you guys about the player dashboards themselves. And I'd actually pulled them out, but I hadn't actually done anything to give you any information on that. Now, this is where things get interesting, because some of this stuff is going to be labeled Kickstarter kind of exclusive. So essentially, when you go ahead and, when I got this one, we've got kind of hard cardboard player boards, and that's not going to be essentially the norm in most cases. So what you're going to see if you purchase this game retail, from my understanding, and I could be completely wrong if they decide to change something, is you're going to see player boards like this, which are completely fine. They're very, very nice. They're flashy, they're high gloss, and the color's fantastic. As you can see, the artwork looks great. I'm just going to bring this back a little bit so you can see it, but that looks awesome. So it's like, you know, this is a perfect example of like, it just does the job. It's not all that thick. It's not a massively thick card or anything like that, but it does the job. And of course, for all of the heroes in the game, you've got one here, then you've got another one here. Again, you've got both sides. The character can be in either chaos or law or neutral, or whichever their affiliation is, essentially. So there you go. There's kind of your pile for the base game. That's pretty cool looking. Yeah, so it's really, I really appreciate the artwork in this. I think it's really nice looking. Now, this is the other thing you get, again, with the Kickstarter stuff, is you get the boards that come in a hard cardboard, which is really nice. Now, whether I can get them all in the bag right now, I don't know. But I'm probably not going to go through all of them, so I'll just show you an example of one. So again, difference being thicker. That's essentially it. So in other words, when you're playing the game and you have your soul gem, it's connected up top here, right where these two kind of icons are. At the bottom here, you have kind of like a turn kind of counter. When you're done, it's a gem, and you flip it when you're done your turn. You keep your inventory off to the left. You keep your abilities off to the right. You can put your cards right here as you go along, and I'll explain that in the solo setup. But as you can see, there is a difference in terms of quality because it's not on these particular types of cards. This has much more color. So that's the only difference I'm noticing, is that even though these are not super thick, the quality that it's printed on and the glossiness and everything else, and even the color itself, it's a little bit better. Like it's just a tad bit more colorful. But you know, having the durability of a player mat that can hold the test of time when your friends are smashing them together and stuff like that, it's nice. So this is essentially a gigantic bag full of them for all the different heroes that are in the game, but I'm not going to go ahead and pull them all out because we'd be going forever. You'll see a bunch of them in the solo playthrough and even in the solo setup videos that are coming very soon. So that's pretty much it. I think I've gone over all of the components. I don't think I've missed anything. The only things I did kind of glaze over is things like stands and stuff like that, which is not that exciting. But that's pretty much it. And of course, we got all the books over here. A majority of them I can't show you because things like the Book of Secrets, which is a really, really cool and unique thing that Ares Games has done with their game, is this really long, slender 39-page, I believe, Book of Secrets that essentially is going to give us stories. You can see there's kind of numbering in there. So as we go through, we'll have decisions to make based on maybe our affiliation to law or chaos or being a neutral character, all that kind of stuff. It's going to be really, really interesting. So I hope you guys will join me on the journey, and it'll be awesome to get your feedback as we go along. I'm going to be asking you guys questions on what we should be doing next, kind of what abilities we should be gathering when I can, all that kind of stuff. The first video to come out after this one will be the solo setup. So that's going to be really exciting because it's going to show you guys how to get the I guess it's the prologue to Sword and Sorcery from the box to the table and just get it all kind of ready to play. I'm going to try to do it within one video, so that's going to be interesting. There's a lot of stuff, so I'll probably do a little prep work, and then that'll likely be coming at the end of this week, is my hope. Worst case scenario, it'll be the weekend or a little bit after. So I don't want to make any hard promises because I actually do have a couple surprises for you guys in terms of some new videos coming out and some new things coming in the mail. So that might interrupt my ability to do the solo setup video this week, but I'm going to do my best to try to make it happen. If not, it'll be next week. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video and the previous one. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. And as always, I appreciate all the support on the channel. You guys are incredible, and the growth has been mind-blowing. And I will see you guys in the world of Sword and Sorcery in our solo setup coming up next. Until next time, keep on rolling solo.